Hello, this is Talk, and we're all very excited here because we're hoping it's 34 minutes to go until the window opens for this rocket to take off, Artemis II. Joining me now to discuss this is Dr. David Horne, who's an Associate Professor of Physics and Astronomy at Gannon University in Pennsylvania. It's so good to talk to you. We're honestly all so excited here. We're looking at the countdown, but there seems to be a little problem with a battery or a sensor.
Yeah, just a little one. So that problem cropped up and then it disappeared and then it raised its head again.
Oh.
Yeah.
Could it really be that a battery stops the whole process?
It really could. I mean, the thing we have to take into account now is, think about something like a car today versus a car 50 years ago, all the sensors and all the things that you have on it that give you all sorts of warnings. And this vehicle has so many sensors to warn you of all these tiny little things that 50 years ago we may not have even known went wrong in the Apollo days. So you've got this issue that this tiny little battery, it could be that problematic. If it is still with the onboard safety mechanism, which I believe it is, looking at the feed there, that could be a big issue, which hopefully they can fix. Sometimes it's those little things that gum up the works.
Yeah, I mean, when the sensors go telling me I've got a flat tyre, they're lying. So I'm just hoping that...
Yeah, you could have driven across the country on a flat tyre one time a day and never known.
And never, ever known it.
Right.
How special is this launch? How important is this to the whole space programme?
I would say right now this is a very important mission, possibly the most important mission, I think, for the whole Artemis program in some ways, because it's been delayed a lot. It's had a lot of issues. And this is really the mission where it'd be great to prove this hardware. It'd be great to show that people can go to the moon and we can do it well before it moves on to the next phase. So I think the space program really needs this to be a good win to really show that what they've done is working,
Why has it taken so long? There's a lot of people saying, well, if we did land on the moon decades ago, why has it taken so long to get back up there?
Well, I feel, something like Apollo had a lot of political impetus behind it. And they went there, they sort of sprinted there and then decided to stop. Had we been sensible and continued to go back for the last 50 years, the history would be very different, of course. But we didn't. So they restarted this, and it's a bit of a race again, of course, because China has space aspirations. China want to land on the moon. And, I've seen people say things like, we're boldly going, we've gone before. This time I think a more positive thing would to say we're boldly going to stay somewhere and go and stay there, So we're sort of looking now for the conclusion of the Artemis mission to really be to start looking at building moon bases and things like that by the end of it, to start having a constant presence. And I think a successful launch here and a successful mission will be the beginning of that.
Why didn't they decide to land on the moon this time? I mean, again, people are saying we've done it before, we know the technology, we know it works, and it was so many years ago, the technology now would be so improved. Why are they just going around the moon?
Well, I think we've got to realize that if you look at the Apollo program, which is the only program really that's gone to the moon like that, that did exactly the same thing. They sent Apollo 8. It went around the moon and then came back to prove that it could be done. And then we had a lander. And then they tested the lander and then they landed on it. And this is, by all accounts, a new spacecraft. It looks like the Apollo spacecraft, like a beefier version, but all of the technology on it is very new. It's state of the art. When you have a spacecraft like that, it's best to test it first before you just trust on a lander and then wind up with people stuck on the moon, which would be a very unfortunate end to your mission. So I think they're being rightfully cautious. I think they've got confidence, but you've still got to be cautious.
Well, was it reckless then when we landed on the moon before? Was that just more luck than judgment? Was it a reckless thing to do? Because again, you're looking at quite a delay between the two journeys. And they're obviously they're more risk adverse now and all of those things. So was it really just a bit gung ho before?
I wouldn't call it reckless. I would say there was more immediacy. to those missions. They really wanted to beat the Russians there and get it done. And what you've got to remember is NASA's funding in its heyday was today is a far cry from what it was back in the 1960s. They spent a lot of money to get Apollo off the ground. The engineers today are working with a fraction of that budget, and that means they're probably doing the best job they can, and it's taking more time, so they have less failures, they have less issues, and that's a big issue. Is if it had Apollo level funding, I don't think we'd be looking at this kind of issue. These kinds of delays that we see.
Well, we just got an update here, David, which is the weather is now being reported 90% favourable, so it's gone up from 80% favourable, showing clear skies and no rain. Now, I cannot understand how rain can stop a rocket from taking off. Why is that such a... why would rain stop it? Surely it just goes through the rain clouds.
Well, you have a lot of issues with weather. Sometimes it's not particularly the rain. If you have, say, thunderclouds and things like that, you don't want to fly through those. You don't want to get a static shock and build up a charge on the outside of your vehicle that could damage your electrical systems and things like that. Rain also affects visibility, of course, and there's going to be a lot of ground-based observation, telescopes and cameras and things watching this rocket as it takes off, to watch how it turns, to watch how it's behaving, to report back any problems. So there's a couple of issues with that, and visibility being a big one. One of the Apollo rockets was actually struck by lightning, and they reset a few switches and they were fine again. You really don't want that, though. It's not
I just thought a bit of rain, with this rocket, is the takeoff, because I've been reading that re-entry is the most dangerous part will be the most dangerous part of this mission. But takeoff, we've seen some disasters with, haven't we?
We have, unfortunately. The most dangerous parts are obviously takeoff and re-entry. The
same as on an aircraft, isn't it? To be honest,
basically takeoff and landing. Cruise is very infrequent that anything happens during a cruise phase of a plane or anything else. But when you're launching a rocket, I don't think anyone would consider it routine. And of course, you've got all those moving parts. You've got all that fuel on board. It is a dangerous moment, of course. What we're seeing here with them looking at these holds, try and fit potential holds, of course, try and fix problems, is trying to mitigate those kinds of disasters. And when you're talking about a re-entry, of course, I think that this capsule is probably pretty good. The problems that we've had with re-entries before have been with heat shield damage and things like that. There's no reason to believe that a pristine spacecraft like this, unless something happened in space, would have a re-entry problem. But yes, those are your two problems, launch and re-entry.
So when this does take off, keeping our fingers crossed here.
Yeah, but let's be positive and say
let's be positive.
So, let's do that. Yeah.
Let's do that. So the fuel stays with it until it goes through the atmosphere. Is that right? So the fuel to take it off, and then does that break away?
So this particular rocket is very much like the space shuttle used to be, where you had those two big boosters on the outside, and they drop away after the initial launch phase and can be recovered. And the rest of the rocket continues.
Right.
So once it gets into space, then that big orange part of the rocket, that big orange fuel tank section, that's going to boost them into orbit, basically. And then that will drop away, and you'll be left with the spacecraft on the top there, just that little module on the top.
The little white module on the top.
Yes, that white thing will come off the top, and the solar panels will unfurl, and it'll look something like the Apollo module did, but a bit beefier.
And that's what will go round the moon.
And that's what will go to the moon. Yep. And that's what will do the orbit around the moon and bring them home again.
And they've tested, of course, before the slingshot effect, haven't they, from coming back around the moon?
They sent an uncrewed version of this very spacecraft with just remotely controlled around the moon. So we know it can successfully make it there and back with no particular effects.
We just got some more news. It's so exciting. The battery is working fine. The issue is being linked to the sensor. But they're still investigating the problem. So there we go. We might be looking at a launch. Yeah, positive thinking.
Just like your car, turn the sensor off and don't worry about the problem.
Do you know what? That's exactly what I do as well.
Yeah.
It's been such a pleasure talking to you. I hope I get a chance to do it again. Thank you very much indeed. Dr. David Horne, then, Associate Professor of Physics and Astronomy at Gannon University in Pennsylvania. So there you go. The battery is working fine, so we might have takeoff.